Pick up a Hershey bar and a Lindt bar from the same checkout lane. Same shelf, same price range, same word on the label. Chocolate. One of them was conched for 72 hours. The other contains an emulsifier made from castor beans. One traces its cocoa to a specific farm. The other meets the FDA minimum by a single percentage point. I spent a month reading the back of every chocolate bar in the candy aisle. The labels tell a story the packaging never would. And one company sells you both versions, on the same shelf, at the same store. Hershey's isn't just a chocolate bar. It's the reason American chocolate tastes the way it does. Milton Hershey built his factory in rural Pennsylvania in 1894, surrounded by dairy farms because he wanted fresh milk in every bar. The problem was preservation. Fresh milk spoils. So Hershey developed a proprietary process, now known simply as the Hershey process, that treats the milk through controlled lipolysis. Lipolysis breaks down fatty acids in the milk to make it shelf-stable. A byproduct of that breakdown is butyric acid, the same compound found in Parmesan cheese, rancid butter, and yes, human vomit. Hershey denies adding butyric acid directly, but the lipolysis process produces it, and it's been the signature tang of every Hershey bar since the 1930s. Here's the remarkable part. American consumers grew up with that flavor. They don't taste it as sour, they taste it as chocolate. And because Hershey defined what chocolate meant for generations of Americans, other domestic manufacturers started adding butyric acid to their own formulas to match the expected flavor. One company's preservation shortcut became an entire country's flavor profile. The FDA requires milk chocolate to contain at least 10% chocolate liquor. That's the cocoa solids and cocoa butter pressed from the cacao bean. Hershey's meets that threshold and not much more. For comparison, European regulations require 25% minimum cocoa solids. Same word on the label, different product entirely. The tell let a piece of Hershey's melt on your tongue. If you detect a faint tang almost acidic underneath the sweetness, that's the butyric acid. Once you notice it, you'll notice it every time. Hershey's built an American institution. It funded a town and amusement park and a school for underprivileged children. The legacy is real, but the chocolate is engineered for consistency and shelf life, not flavor complexity. I grew up thinking that tang was just what chocolate tasted like. It's not. And if Hershey's defined the floor, the next brand shows you what happens when someone builds on it with a borrowed name. If you've ever eaten Cadbury in the UK and then tried it in the States, you know something is wrong. I brought a bar back from London last year and tasted them side by side. They're completely different. That's because they are different. Hershey has held the US manufacturing license for Cadbury since 1988. In 2015, Hershey actually blocked imports of UK-made Cadbury bars into the United States, citing trademark infringement. American Cadbury is made by Hershey in Hershey's factories using Hershey's process. The UK version uses higher cocoa content, fresh milk, and no PGPR. The US version adds PGPR, polyglycerol polyreicanolate. That's an emulsifier made from castor beans that reduces viscosity so the chocolate flows more easily through factory machinery. It also means the factory needs less cocoa butter. PGPR does the structural work that cocoa butter used to do. The US version also lists sugar as the first ingredient. The UK version lists milk. The tell compare the ingredient lists. UK Cadbury milk, UK Cadbury, milk, sugar, cocoa butter, cocoa mass, vegetable fats, emulsifiers, E442, E476, flavorings, and the US Cadbury, sugar, milk, chocolate, cocoa butter, milk fat, soy lecithin, PGPR natural and artificial flavor. The order tells you the priority. Sugar first means more sugar than any other ingredient by weight. American Cadbury is still a functional candy bar. It's sweet, it melts, it satisfies a craving. The issue is the label. It says Cadbury. It looks like Cadbury, but it's a Hershey product wearing a British name. And if a borrowed name can hide an entirely different recipe, what about a borrowed word? Look closely at the bag. Not chocolate chips. It was chocolatey chips. That single letter Y is doing enormous legal work. The FDA defines chocolate, it must contain chocolate, liquor, cocoa butter, and sugar. If a product replaces cocoa butter with vegetable oil, it cannot legally be called chocolate. It becomes chocolate-flavored or chocolatey. Nestlé's Toll House. Chocolatey chips use vegetable oil, specifically palm kernel oil, instead of cocoa butter. Why does this matter? Cocoa butter has a melting point just below body temperature, which is why real chocolate melts on your tongue. Palm kernel oil has a higher melting point and a waxy texture. It doesn't dissolve the same way, it sits. Your mouth registers the difference even if your brain doesn't have the vocabulary for it. You just think the chips taste fine instead of rich. That gap between fine and rich is the gap between palm kernel oil and cocoa butter. The tell read the front of the bag before the back. If it says chocolatey, chocolate flavored, or made with chocolate, the cocoa butter has been replaced. The word chocolate standing alone means the product meets the FDA standard. One word versus two. That's the dividing line. Nestlé also sells real chocolate chips on the same shelf. They cost a bit more. The label difference is subtle but legally significant. And if a single letter can redefine what's in the bag, the next brand takes label engineering further still. Russell Stover is the best-selling boxed chocolate in America. If someone has given you a heart-shaped box on Valentine's Day, there's a good chance it was Russell Stover. And brand was founded in 1923 by Russell and Clara Stover in Denver. For decades, it was a family-run business producing chocolate-covered creams and caramels. In 2014, Lindt and Sprüngli, the Swiss luxury chocolate company, acquired Russell Stover. That's worth pausing on. The company that invented modern chocolate conching in 1879 now owns the brand that coats many of its products in compound coating. Not chocolate. Compound. Compound coating replaces cocoa butter with palm kernel oil or other vegetable fats. It's cheaper, it doesn't require tempering, and it doesn't melt the same way real chocolate does. Pick up a Russell Stover box and read the fine print. Many pieces say chocolate coated on the front, but the ingredient list reveals the coating is partially or fully compound. You're paying for the perception of chocolate while eating something that legally isn't. The tell the melt test. Place a piece of Russell Stover coating on your tongue and let it sit. Real chocolate melts smoothly and evenly at body temperature. Compound coating feels waxy and leaves a film. Your tongue knows the difference immediately. Russell Stover is accessible, affordable, and it's solved the gifting problem for millions of people. The irony is that its parent company knows exactly how to make world-class chocolate. They just chose not to for this brand. And if compound coating surprises you, the next one removes any pretense entirely. Every Easter, every Halloween, every Christmas. Palmer's owns the holiday chocolate aisle. Those foil-wrapped bunnies, the coins, the Santas. Palmer's has been making them since 1966 in Reading, Pennsylvania. And almost none of it is chocolate. Palmer's products are made with compound coating. Palm kernel oil, cocoa powder sugar whey, no cocoa butter, no chocolate liquor. The foil wrappers say chocolate flavored in small type, but the shape and placement do the marketing. A child sees a chocolate bunny. The package never uses the word chocolate alone because it legally can't. Here's what makes Palmer's the emotional climax of this section. A Palmer's bunny retails for about $1. A comparable-sized real chocolate bunny costs 4 to 5 times as much. Palmer's has built its entire business on the gap between what chocolate looks like and what chocolate actually is. The foil, the shape, the seasonal placement. Every design choice says chocolate. The ingredients say otherwise. The tell flip the package over. If palm kernel oil appears before any cocoa ingredient you're holding, compound confectionery, not chocolate. This applies to any holiday chocolate, not just Palmer's. The foil is the first clue. Real chocolate rarely needs foil to sell itself. Palmer's delivers exactly what it promises at its price point. For $1, you get a seasonal treat that looks festive and tastes sweet. But it's worth knowing that the chocolate aisle at Easter contains a lot of product that isn't by any legal or technical definition chocolate. 5 brands. 5 versions of the same strategy. Replace cocoa butter with cheaper fats. Use emulsifiers to mimic what cocoa butter does naturally. Add butyric acid or PGPR to compensate for what was removed. Call it chocolate or get as close to calling it chocolate as the label law allows. The pattern isn't deception, it's economics. Cocoa butter is the most expensive component of any chocolate bar. Every substitution in every brand we just looked at is a cocoa butter removal story. And once you understand that, you can find the brands that chose to keep it, including one owned by the same company that makes Russell Stover. What does 3 ingredients look like in a chocolate bar? This chocolate liquor cane, sugar, cocoa butter. That's the entire ingredient list for Endangered Species, 88%. Dark chocolate. No PGPR, no palm oil, no vanillin, no soy lecithin. 3 ingredients, and they're listed in descending order, meaning the first thing you're eating is actual ground cacao. The brand was founded in 1993 in Indianapolis, and 10% of net profits go to wildlife conservation partners. But what matters for the chocolate? The simplicity forces quality. When you only have 3 ingredients, each one has to carry its weight. There's nowhere to hide. The flavor profile at 88% is intense. Bitter entry followed by earthy mid-tones, then a slow release of dark fruit. I keep a bar in my desk drawer. The cocoa butter content delivers a clean melt that starts the moment the bar touches your tongue. No waxy residue, no film. At roughly $4 for a 3-ounce bar. Endangered Species is more expensive than Hershey's, but less than most premium dark chocolate. It's the accessible entry point into real chocolate. Widely available at Target, Walmart, and Whole Foods. But if 3 ingredients impressed you, the next brand removes even more.
Join us in the world of Hugh.
Hugh started with a question most chocolate companies never ask. What if you made chocolate with no soy lecithin at all? Lecithin is in nearly every chocolate bar on the market, including premium brands. It's an emulsifier that improves texture. Who decided to skip it entirely? Jordan Brown co-founded Who Kitchen in New York City in 2012, initially as a restaurant built around the idea of food as close to its natural state as possible. The chocolate line launched shortly after. The ingredients: organic cacao, unrefined organic coconut sugar, organic cocoa butter. For their milk chocolate alternative, they use cashew butter instead of dairy. No soy, no refined sugar, no emulsifiers. How does the chocolate hold together without lecithin? Longer conching and precise temperature control during tempering. The cocoa butter itself acts as the binding agent when the particle size is ground fine enough. It's more expensive to produce because the process takes longer. But the result is a bar where you taste cacao and nothing else. The texture is different from conventional chocolate. Slightly grainier because the particle distribution isn't smoothed by emulsifiers. I noticed it on the first bite. Some people love it. Some miss the silk of lecithin-smoothed chocolate. That's an honest trade-off. At $5 to $6 per bar, who isn't cheap? But for people who want the fewest possible interventions between the cacao bean and their mouth, this is as close as mass market gets. The next brand asks an even bigger question. Not what's in the bar, but who made it possible. In 2005, a Dutch journalist named Toon van de Keuken ate a bar of chocolate on live television. Then he walked into a police station and tried to turn himself in. His crime: knowingly consuming the product of child labor. The police refused to arrest him, so he started a chocolate company instead. Tony's Chocolonely exists to prove that chocolate can be made without exploitation. Every bar is sourced through a fully traceable supply chain. They pay above fair trade prices and work directly with cooperatives in Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire, where roughly 60% of the world's cocoa is grown. The bars are intentionally divided into unequal pieces as a visual reminder that the chocolate industry's profits are not equally shared. The chocolate itself is conched for a minimum of 24 hours. Ingredients for the milk chocolate: sugar, dry whole milk, cocoa butter, cocoa mass, soy lecithin. No PGPR, no palm oil, no compound coating. The flavor is rich, creamy, and noticeably smoother than most American milk chocolate because the extended conching develops complexity that short processing eliminates. At $5 to $6 per bar, Tony's costs more. And the mission can feel like it overshadows the chocolate. But I gave a bar to my neighbor without explaining any of the backstory. She asked me where to buy more before she finished the first row. The quality stands on its own, the ethics are a bonus. And that leaves one brand, the one that connects everything we've talked about today. Remember number 6? Russell Stover. Compound coating. Palm kernel oil. Waxy melt. America's best-selling boxed chocolate. Lindt and Sprigly owns Russell Stover. They also make Lindt Excellence, which contains exactly 4 ingredients: chocolate cocoa, butter cocoa powder, and bourbon vanilla beans. Same company, same parent corporation. 2 completely different philosophies and 2 products. They know how to make compound confectionery. They know how to make world-class chocolate. They sell both. Same shelf, same store. Rodolphe Lindt invented conching in 1879. He left a mixing machine running over a weekend by accident and discovered that extended agitation transformed gritty, harsh chocolate into something smooth and complex. Before Lindt chocolate was grainy, after Lindt chocolate was chocolate. Every bar you've ever enjoyed exists because of a process one man stumbled onto in Bern, Switzerland. Lindt Excellence, 85% is conched for up to 72 hours. The extended processing breaks particles below 20 microns smaller than what your tongue can detect. It evaporates harsh volatile acids while preserving hundreds of delicate flavor compounds. The cocoa butter content is higher than any mass market competitor because Lindt doesn't need PGPR or palm oil to achieve viscosity. I did a blind tasting with 6 people who all said they didn't like dark chocolate. 4 of them changed their minds with this bar. The flavor unfolds in stages. Sharp cacao entry, a brief bitter peak, then the middle opens into dried fruit toasted almond, and a faint smokiness that lingers. Real chocolate doesn't hit you with sweetness first, it builds. 2 hours of conching gives you Hershey's. 72 gives you this. Honest limitation price and intensity? At $4 to $5 for a 3.5-ounce bar, it's a premium product. And 85% dark is polarizing. If you prefer milk chocolate, Lindt's milk offerings are gentler, but still miles ahead of anything using PGPR or compound coating. The tell from number 9, do it again. Let a square of Lindt Excellence 85% melt on your tongue. No tang, no wax, no film. The chocolate dissolves cleanly because the only fat present is cocoa butter, and cocoa butter melts at body temperature. Same test, same tongue. Opposite experience. If the ingredient list includes PGPR or palm kernel oil, someone replaced the cocoa butter. That replacement is the single most common cost-cutting move in the entire chocolate industry. Now, you know what it means. If the label says chocolatey, chocolate-flavored, or made with chocolate, the product does not meet the FDA definition of chocolate. The qualifiers are legally required. Read them. If the chocolate doesn't melt cleanly on your tongue at body temperature, the fat isn't cocoa butter. The melt test works every time because physics doesn't change with the brand name. The company that invented the process that makes all modern chocolate possible also sells compound confectionery. The industry knows exactly what great chocolate is. They just also know what's cheaper. Now you know the difference too. What's the last chocolate bar you bought? And what's actually in it? Check the label tonight and tell me in the comments. I'm curious how many of you find the word chocolatey where you expected chocolate. Please pressing subscribe button. Different product every week, same depth, same honesty. Real chocolate melts at body temperature. Everything else is engineering.